안녕하세요. 스피코리안입니다. 오늘은 noun 플러스 동안에 대해서 공부할 거예요. 어제 2시간 동안 영화를 봤어요. 동안은 is used after a time or period noun to indicate the time at which an action or state continues. So maybe in English is equivalent with the for or during. Do you remember when you talk about the time period, we just use study with this calendar and example is December 12월 달력이에요. So from December 6th to December 8th, there's a 쉬다. Schedule shows 쉬다, take a rest, right? So when we talk about, from December 6th to December 8th, I will take a rest, right? 그러면 how do you ask a question? So from when? December 6th, right? So ask a question. 언제부터 언제까지 쉬어요? So you use from and until, till, so 부터까지, right? So we used to answer this question. 12월 6일부터 12월 8일까지 쉬어요, right? How about this one? So from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. 일해요. So from what time to what time? 일해요. So 몇 시부터 몇 시까지 일해요? 질문했어요. To answer this question, 9시부터 12시까지 일해요 말해요. Right? But we want to say for now, for 3 hours, I work, right? For 3 hours. So how do you say in Korean? So that part we're going to study, right? So when you talk about the period of time, so for one day 하면 1일, right? 1일. Day is 1일. And a week is 일주일. So day and a week, you use the Sino-Korean numbers to express the period of time. So 2 weeks, 2주일. 3 weeks, 3주일. So you use Sino-Korean numbers. 4 months, 4 months you can use both numbering system. So the first one use Sino numbers and 개월 together. So for a month, for just 1 month, 1개월, 2 months, 2개월, 3 months, 3개월. Let's use native Korean numbers. A month, 한 달, 2 months, 2달, 3 months, 3달 말해요. So when you use the native Korean numbers and kind of counting unit, you change 하나 to 한. That's why it's not 하나 달, but 한 달. Remember, 한 개, 두 개, 세 개. So it's same thing, right? So for here, for time, 3 hours in Korean, you use native Korean numbers. When you read time for hours, we use native Korean numbers, right? So 3 hours is 3시간. 3시간. 하나, 둘, 셋 change to 한, 두, 세, 네, right? So 3 hours, 3시간. 4 minutes, when you read time, you use Sino-Korean numbers, right? So 10 minutes in Korean, 10분. 5 minutes, 5분. 10 minutes, 10분. 15 minutes, 15분. So you use Sino-Korean numbers, right? So 10 minutes is 10분, but you want to say for 10 minutes. That's 10분, and you attach 동안 after the time period. So 10분 동안. And second picture shows from 7 p.m. 7시부터 9 p.m. Yeah, we don't know p.m. or a.m. 7시부터 9시까지. So the time period is 2 hours, right? So for 2 hours, remember, we use native Korean numbers. So 2시간 동안. 2시간 동안. I intentionally use the Sino-Korean numbers as I use the red colors. And when I use the native numbers, I just marked in a blue color. Okay. And look at the calendar. This one is a 달력이에요. The first red box, 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, 다섯, 4, 5 days, right? So days, we use Sino-Korean numbers, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So days, 1, so 5일 동안, 4, 5 days. Next box is for a week, right? For week, we use Sino numbers again. So 1, so 일주일 동안. 일주일 동안. How about a month, right? For months, for 2 months. 2 months, let's use, for months, you can use Sino-Korean numbers and native Korean numbers, both of them, right? So let's use Sino-Korean numbers first. So for 2 months, so 1, 2, Sino-Korean numbers, 2, and then you use 개월 with the Sino numbers, right? So 2개월, and then 동안. Let's use native Korean numbers. 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷. Change to 한, 두, 세, 넷. So 2, and then 달. So 2달 동안. How about 4 months? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 개월. So 4개월 동안. And use native Korean numbers. 한, 두, 세, 네 with a 달, right? So 4달 동안. How about years? So for 3 years, right? From 2020 to 2022. 1, 2, 3. 4 years you use Sino-Korean numbers too. So 3 and the year, 년. So 3년 동안. 3년 동안. So most likely you use the Sino-Korean numbers except for months with the 달 and for hours, right? Okay, look at this one. So 7시부터 9시까지 영화를 봤어요. That means for 2 hours 영화를 봤어요, right? So how do you say for 2 hours? 면 2시간 동안 영화를 봤어요. Okay, next one. From 1월부터 4월까지 한국어 배우고 있다. Those are cool, right? 그럼 1, 2, 3, 4. So four months, right? For 4 months 한국어 배우고 있다. 그러면 달. So let's use Sino-Korean numbers first, and then you can use native Korean numbers, right? So let's use Sino numbers first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. So 4, 4, and then you attach 개월 with the Sino numbers, right? So 4개월 동안 한국어를 배우고 있어요. 4개월 동안 한국어를 배우고 있어요. And let's use native numbers. 한, 두, 세, 네 plus 달, right? So 4달 동안 한국어를 배우고 있어요. Next one, 1일 부산 여행했다, past tense, right? 1일, so for 1 day, you want to say for 1 day. So 1일 동안, 맞아요, right? But 1일 is another word in Korean, 하루. 2일, another word is 이틀. For 3일, another word, 사흘. So there are some native words, but let's practice with the 하루 for today. So 1일 동안, 맞아요. But another word, 하루, let's use 하루. 하루 plus 동안. So 하루 동안 부산을 여행했어요. 또 말해요. Or 1일 동안 부산을 여행했어요. 방학, school vacation, 이 책, this book, 읽을 것이다, future tense. So during school break, right? 그럼 방학 동안 이 책을 읽을 거예요. 방학 동안 이 책을 읽을 거예요. How long? So let's make a question. So how long you hospitalized, right? 병원에 있었어요. The answer shows 5일 동안, for 5 days, right? So 5일 동안 있었어요. 그러면 how long? So how do you ask a question for how long? 얼마, and then 동안. So 얼마 동안 병원에 있었어요. 얼마 동안 병원에 있었어요. 5일 동안 있었어요. 5일 동안 병원에 있었어요. Okay, great. So today we've learned the noun, time noun plus 동안. Okay, great. Thank you so much. 고맙습니다.